They told you love was sacred. They told you women were made of compassion and warmth. But Aristotle, the greatest philosopher of all time, didn't believe that. He said something so dark, so disturbing, that even modern scholars try to hide it. In his words, a woman is an incomplete man, a failed version of what nature intended. And when you understand what he really meant, you begin to uncover the hidden truth behind why many relationships today feel broken, manipulative, and one-sided. Because maybe, just maybe, Aristotle wasn't talking about biology. He was exposing something far more dangerous, the secret psychology of desire and control. Athens, the birthplace of philosophy and the silence of its women. The marble halls shimmered under the golden light of late afternoon. Philosophers argued in the courtyards, debating justice, virtue, and the purpose of the soul. But Aristotle's gaze wandered elsewhere, toward the corners of the hall, where women poured wine, eyes lowered, faces smooth and unreadable. They were taught not to speak, not to interrupt brilliance. Their duty was to serve and to smile. And yet, Aristotle saw something the others did not. Behind those calm faces, something watched back. Not emotion, not submission, something sharper, like still water that hides its depth. He turned to his pupil and whispered, "Do you see how quiet they are? It is not ignorance. It is a strategy." The young man laughed, thinking his master was joking. But Aristotle didn't laugh. He studied the way one woman's eyes flickered briefly toward him, then returned to the ground. A glance so quick it could be mistaken for an accident. But it wasn't. That single look said, "I know you see me." And for a philosopher who had built his life on reason, that glance felt like a mirror he could not look away from. He left the hall that evening with a strange unease, the sense that nature had hidden something powerful inside the very thing men believed was weak. That night, under the dim glow of an oil lamp, Aristotle began to write. His quill trembled slightly, not from age, but from the weight of his thought. "Nature creates nothing in vain," he wrote, "yet in woman something went unfinished." He paused. How could nature, the flawless architect, make a design so beautiful, yet so incomplete? He believed that men were the full expression of form, rational, decisive, driven by purpose. Women, he thought, were emotion embodied, a vessel of potential that never reached its final shape. But as he wrote, his words began to disturb him. Because what if imperfection was not weakness, but camouflage? He thought of the women in the hall, how their silence had a rhythm, their stillness a strange control. They moved slowly, carefully, making others comfortable. Yet he could feel, even without proof, that this gentleness was not passive. It was deliberate. A kind of quiet intelligence nature had woven into them, not to lead with logic, but to rule with emotion. He dipped his quill again and wrote another line. "Perhaps what man calls flaw is only another kind of power, one he cannot understand." Aristotle stopped, staring at his own words. He had just admitted something dangerous, something that could shatter the foundation of everything Athens believed about women. He blew out the lamp, but even in the darkness, the idea stayed awake. The next day, he went to the marketplace, not to buy, but to observe. He wanted to see if his theory was madness or truth. There, in the chaos of merchants shouting and men arguing, women moved like quiet shadows, unnoticed yet everywhere. A wife tugged her husband's arm just before he made a foolish purchase, a mother whispering something to her son that made him suddenly ashamed, a young girl pretending to trip, only to draw the eyes of every man around her. Charm, vulnerability, emotion, three weapons more ancient than war. Aristotle realized that these weren't accidents of personality. They were designs of nature. Men ruled the city with laws, but women ruled the men with feeling. Men spoke of power. Women became it. He remembered again that woman from the hall, her eyes, her silence. He finally understood. Silence is not absence of power. It is power contained. He walked through the market, watching as an argument between two traders was dissolved, not by reason, but by the soft tone of a wife's voice. Her words were gentle, but her timing was precise. In an instant, Anger turned to guilt, and guilt to agreement. He whispered to himself, "She moves emotions like a general moves soldiers." That was the day Aristotle's philosophy of the human soul changed forever. He began to see emotion not as weakness, but as a form of intelligence. One man could feel, but never master. Weeks later, Aristotle gathered his students under a fig tree. He did not teach geometry or logic or metaphysics that day. Instead, he asked a single question. "Tell me, what is the difference between power and influence?" The students answered in fragments. "Power controls. Influence persuades. Power commands obedience." Aristotle smiled faintly. "And yet," he said, "when a mother quiets a crying child, is that not power?" The students looked confused. He continued, "When a woman makes a man question his own certainty, when her tears can stop anger, when her silence can make him speak, is that not power in its purest form?" No one answered. Aristotle's eyes turned distant, as if he were looking far beyond the olive trees, into the centuries ahead. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "What men see as weakness is her greatest weapon." The words hung in the air like a curse and a prophecy at once. "Because the world listens to tears, not truth." He turned to the students. "You will all rule one day. You will lead cities, armies, families. But remember this, the one who can control emotion controls reason itself." A sudden wind brushed through the leaves. The students felt uneasy, as if their master had said something that should never have been spoken aloud. Aristotle gathered his scrolls and walked away, leaving them in silence. That night, the philosopher sat by his window, watching the moon's reflection tremble in a bowl of water. He thought about nature, how it never wastes anything. Every thorn protects a rose. Every predator keeps the forest alive. So what was the purpose of this imbalance between man and woman? Why make one so rational and the other so emotional, unless emotion itself was the ultimate form of control? He whispered to himself, "Nature hides its power behind beauty." He remembered again that line, "Nature creates nothing in vain." Maybe woman wasn't unfinished at all. Maybe she was the final test, the mystery men would never solve, because power that hides behind softness can never be defeated by strength. He closed his eyes, the ink of his thoughts still wet in his mind. In the distance, the sound of laughter drifted from the city, a woman's laughter. And Aristotle, the man who explained the universe, could not explain that sound. He only knew one thing: the design was perfect, because it fooled even him. Night, a single room. The glow of a phone screen cuts through the dark. He stares at it. One word burns into his eyes. Seen. No reply. No explanation. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't mean absence. It means control. His thumb trembles above the screen. He types, deletes, types again. He scrolls up, reading the old messages. Her laughter, her hearts, her late-night confessions. It all feels like a memory that never belonged to him. He exhales, whispering to himself, maybe she's busy, but he knows she's not, because this silence isn't random. It's measured. Every second she doesn't reply is a choice, a slow tightening of a leash he didn't know he was wearing. On the shelf behind him sits a book, Aristotle's Politics. He had bought it years ago, never read it. Tonight, the philosopher's ghost feels alive in the room. The man looks at his reflection in the phone screen, his own face staring back at him, confused, needy, powerless. He mutters, "How did I end up like this?" The answer? He was never taught that silence could be a weapon. Flashback, 6 months earlier. She was warmth itself, the kind that feels like sunlight after years of cold. Soft voice, gentle laugh, that rare kind of eye contact that makes a man feel seen. Not looked at, but seen. That's how it begins. The illusion of safety. They met at a cafe. She listened like no one else ever did. She remembered his words, repeated them softly later. Made him feel intelligent, valuable, alive. He mistook attention for love. Aristotle once said, all human actions aim at some good. But what if the good she aimed for wasn't him, but the power over him? Weeks passed. He found himself adjusting to her moods, sending messages first, apologizing even when he didn't know why. Every time she went silent, he panicked. And when she spoke again, it felt like salvation. He didn't realize it then, but she had built a system, a silent empire made of emotion and timing. One smile could erase her cruelty. One apology from him could restore her throne. She was not cruel by nature. She was designed by nature to win without fighting. Aristotle's old words echoed through the centuries. Women do not conquer with swords. No, they conquer with absence, with the unbearable need they leave behind. Narration begins. Aristotle's voice intertwined with the modern man's thoughts. They do not conquer with swords. They conquer with silence, with timing, with emotional truth wrapped in lies. The man reads an old text from her. You're the only one who understands me. He had believed it, but now he sees it differently. That sentence wasn't a confession. It was a hook. She gave him something precious, purpose, then took it away, so he would chase it forever. He remembers how she cried once, telling him about her past, her pain. Her tears fell like glass, sharp, shimmering, real. He held her, swore to protect her. But later, when he needed her, she turned away, cold, empty, distant. It wasn't random, it was rhythm. Push and pull, reward and punishment. Aristotle would have called it the art of ruling the emotional kingdom, to make the other feel, while remaining untouched yourself. He stares at his reflection again. She had built a mirror, one that only reflected what he wanted to see. Her love was never real. It was architecture, a structure of emotions built with mathematical precision. She didn't destroy him by leaving. She destroyed him by teaching him that affection could be withheld like power. Morning breaks. The man sits by the window, staring at a city waking up. Cars move. People laugh. Life goes on. But inside him, something has broken and something else has awakened. He whispers to himself, love was never equal. He begins to understand what Aristotle saw in those silent women of Athens. It wasn't just submission, it was strategy. Nature had made one sex rule the world with reason and the other with emotion. He realizes now, every time he apologized just to keep her calm, every time he stayed silent to keep her happy, he was losing ground in a war he didn't even know existed. Love was not a partnership. It was a negotiation of power disguised as affection. He opens Aristotle's book at random. A line catches his eye. He who masters emotion rules not only himself, but those who cannot. He exhales. A bitter laugh escapes his lips. She mastered it, he says. She mastered me. He deletes the chat, deletes the number. But the silence remains, because silence was never hers alone. Now it belongs to him too. He has learned the same weapon. He understands what she did and why she did it. For the first time, he feels no pain, only clarity. He looks outside again. A couple walks hand in hand down the street, smiling. He wonders how long before one begins to control the other, because that's what Aristotle was trying to warn humanity about. That love, beneath its poetry and beauty, was always built on strategy. The one who feels less wins more. The one who controls emotion controls the world. Late that night, the man dreams. He's standing in an ancient marble hall. Aristotle himself sits there, illuminated by torchlight, scrolls open, eyes calm, unblinking. The philosopher looks at him and says, "You understand now, don't you? Nature does not waste power. It only hides it in silence." The man nods, and in that moment, he's no longer the victim. He's the observer. He finally sees love for what it truly is. Not a connection of souls, but a battlefield of minds. A test of who can control emotion more completely. As the dream fades, Aristotle's voice lingers in the darkness. In every age, the heart remains the most beautiful cage. The sun poured gently over Athens, bathing the marble courtyard in gold. A circle of young men sat before Aristotle, their wax tablets balanced on their knees, eyes eager for truth. Aristotle's voice was calm but sharp, a blade wrapped in reason. Man's desire, he began, builds kingdoms. but woman's desire decides who rules them. The students exchanged glances. The words unsettled them, not because they were untrue, but because they revealed too much. Aristotle continued, pacing slowly between them. A man's hunger is visible. It builds ships. It fights wars. It writes poetry. But a woman's hunger, he paused, raising his eyes to the horizon. It hides beneath beauty, beneath silence, beneath the mask of grace. Her desire is not for love, but for influence over the one who loves. One student dared to ask, Master, are you saying women seek control, not affection? Aristotle's faint smile was almost pity. Affection is control, he said softly. Every act of tenderness is a strategy of power. Every tear, a command disguised as emotion, the students wrote, but uneasily. One looked toward the city, where women passed by carrying jugs of water. Quiet, graceful, unseen. They seemed harmless. But Aristotle's words planted a question that would echo through centuries. Who truly rules? The one who acts or the one who decides why he acts? That night, Aristotle sat alone in his study, an oil lamp flickering beside him. The air smelled of ink and old papyrus. He sketched a simple image, a mirror. In it, he drew the reflection of a man reaching for a woman, and beside her, another mirror, showing him reaching endlessly for his own image. He wrote, Love is the mirror where man seeks his worth. Woman, understanding this, polishes the mirror to her advantage. He remembered watching noblemen fall in love. Powerful men turned gentle, poets made foolish, warriors begging for attention. He saw the pattern. Every man desired to be admired. Every woman learned how to control admiration. He whispered to himself, almost with sadness, It is not deception. It is design. He imagined the gods smiling down, amused by the game they had created, the eternal exchange of illusion. In that reflection, love was no longer a feeling. It was a battlefield, where admiration became the weapon and validation, the crown. Fast forward 24 centuries. A woman sits in her apartment, dim lights, glowing phone screen reflecting in her eyes. She scrolls through her photos, filters, angles, soft smiles carefully chosen. Her finger hovers over the post button, knowing exactly what it will do. Within minutes, the likes begin to flow. Hearts, comments, flames, digital affirmations stacking like a temple of worship. She doesn't smile for joy. She smiles for control. Each notification is a whisper of power. Each man who comments, a pawn in a silent game of attention. Her reflection on the screen is perfect. Not truthful, but powerful. And Aristotle's ancient mirror lives again. Not of silver, but of pixels. She doesn't need to be loved anymore. Only noticed. Because in this age, attention has replaced affection, validation has replaced intimacy, and illusion has replaced reality. She no longer needs truth, only validation. The voice echoes through time, blending Aristotle's wisdom with the modern world's noise. Once she wept to win compassion. Now she posts to win attention. Once men built statues for love. Now they build followers for it. We see the scrolling men, staring at screens, chasing shadows of beauty, mistaking pixels for passion. They don't see the design, that ancient strategy disguised as emotion, reborn in every generation. The narrator continues, calm but merciless. The modern woman doesn't beg for love. She manufactures desire, and the modern man doesn't lead, he reacts. The scene shifts. Aristotle's parchment burns away, replaced by glowing phone screens. The ink becomes light, the words become code. The truth remains unchanged. In every age, the voice says, the mirror decides the master. And now, the mirror belongs to her. A soft breeze rustles through the ruins of Athens. The same olive trees still whisper the secrets of power and love. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear Aristotle's final thought, not written in scrolls but carried by wind. Desire shapes destiny, but only one of them ever learns how to shape desire. The light of Athens had begun to fade. The streets, once filled with the shouts of merchants and the laughter of children, were now quiet, painted gold by the dying sun. Aristotle stood alone atop the steps of his academy, his scrolls gathered beside him, a lifetime of thoughts condensed into fading ink. He was older now, slower, softer, yet his eyes still burned with the same relentless clarity that once terrified kings. As he looked toward the horizon, he whispered to himself, "The world will not accept what I've seen." He had written about logic, virtue, and reason, and they applauded him. But the moment he wrote about desire, about woman, about the hidden architecture of emotion, the applause turned to silence. He was not angry, only tired. "They call it love," he murmured, "but I see patterns, invisible strings pulling even the strongest minds." He remembered the women of Athens, graceful, obedient, unseen, but behind their eyes, calculation, instinct, purpose. They did not command armies, they commanded hearts. And from there, everything else followed. Aristotle sighed. He knew humanity would never forgive him for saying that truth aloud, because the greatest truths are always the ones that wound pride. As the sun sank into the sea, he closed his eyes and said quietly, "The balance of the world rests not on justice, but on seduction." And then the light disappeared. A busy city street, neon lights, the hum of cars and phones and half-lived dreams. A man walks beside a woman, her tears glistening beneath the street lamp. She pleads, her voice trembling, her words soft but rehearsed. He stops, watches her, and for the first time he sees, not her beauty, not her pain, but the quiet calculation behind it, the rhythm of emotion crafted not from love, but from control. He feels a chill crawl through his chest. All the years he spent believing he was saving her, comforting her, loving her. All the while she was writing the script, one tear at a time. Her sadness wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was command. He doesn't speak, he just takes a step back, and another, and she realizes he's walking away. Her tears stop instantly. For the first time, her power slips, because power, she now understands, only works on the willing. And he is no longer willing. He leaves her standing there, her reflection trembling in a puddle on the sidewalk, a perfect metaphor for what remains when illusion breaks. Aristotle never hated women. The voice echoes, steady, unafraid. He feared the power they didn't know they had, and the destruction they could cause when they did. The camera pans through centuries, from ancient temples to modern offices, from queens behind thrones to influencers behind screens. The faces change, the method evolves, but the essence remains. Emotion as empire, attention as currency, affection as control. The narrator continues, almost mournful. He warned that love in the wrong hands could reshape civilizations, not through war, but through the quiet redirection of men's purpose. We see flashes, Helen of Troy's face, and 1,000 ships burning, Cleopatra's smile, and Rome trembling. A modern celebrity's post, millions falling in love with a ghost. The power he spoke of was never evil, it was simply forbidden to name. Because to expose the truth of emotional influence is to strip away the illusion that keeps society comfortable. And comfort, not truth, is what most people worship. The world fades to darkness. Only a faint light remains, like the last candle in a storm. The narrator's voice lowers to a whisper. In every age, men built civilizations. We see their hands, sculpting stone, raising towers, writing laws, dying in wars. Then the frame shifts to women, not fighting, not building, but watching, choosing. But it was women who decided which ones would fall. Silence follows, heavy, the kind that feels like revelation. A final image, Aristotle's scroll, half burned, resting beneath the ashes of time. On it, faintly written, his last warning to humanity. Power disguised as love is the oldest trick of nature, and the only one that still works. The screen fades to black. The echo remains. And for a moment, you can't tell whether Aristotle was condemning women or simply telling men the truth they never wanted to hear. 1,000 years after Aristotle's death, his warning breathes again, but no one recognizes it. Because it no longer lives on parchment, it lives in pixels. The scene opens with a young woman in her bedroom. Soft light, perfect angles. She stares at her phone screen, the reflection of herself glowing back at her. Each picture she posts is a weapon, designed to be admired. Each caption, a subtle spell, crafted to pull invisible hearts closer. She smiles, but not for joy, for control. Notifications flood in. Hearts, comments, messages from men chasing something that never existed. She feels powerful, desired, untouchable. But as she scrolls, her smile fades. Because power, once tasted, always demands more. No message satisfies. No praise fills the silence after the phone goes dark. And in that darkness, for the first time, she feels it. The same emptiness that once haunted the men she manipulated. The echo of power returning to its source. Cut to a man sitting alone in a cafe. He's staring at his phone, the same glowing screen, the same endless loop of perfect faces, perfect smiles, perfect lies. He's not angry anymore, just numb. He scrolls past one illusion after another. Women selling confidence disguised as vulnerability, affection disguised as strategy. But beneath it all, he feels something tragic, a shared exhaustion. Both sides playing the same game, both losing. He whispers quietly to himself, nobody loves anymore. They just trade emotions for attention. Across from him, a couple argues, soft at first, then sharp. The woman says, you never make me feel special. The man answers, you never let me. And suddenly it's clear. Aristotle's prophecy wasn't about gender. It was about human nature itself. Once love became a transaction of power, no one remembered what it was meant to be. Night falls again in Athens. Or perhaps it's symbolic, for the whole world is now Athens. A museum stands silent. Inside, a group of students gaze at a cracked statue of Aristotle. A professor speaks softly. They say Aristotle believed women were incomplete men. But maybe he meant something deeper. Maybe he saw that both genders would eventually try to complete themselves through each other and destroy the balance in the process. As he speaks, the lights flicker. The statue's eyes, half broken, seem to watch them. A student asks, so what did he want us to learn? The professor pauses, then answers quietly, that the more we chase control, the less we understand connection. Montage. The world moving fast. Lovers texting goodnight while thinking of someone else. Influencers crying on camera for sympathy. Men preaching stoicism while dying of loneliness. Women preaching empowerment while starving for affection. The echo of power fills everything. Louder, colder, emptier. Then, silence. A voice rises. Not Aristotle's, not modern. Something older, universal, like the whisper of nature itself. You wanted power through love, but love was never meant to be owned. You turned warmth into currency, and now you count what can't be measured. A final scene. A woman deletes her social media account. A man drops his phone into the ocean. They meet, not online, not in fantasy, but in a quiet park under real light. No filters, no games, no scripts. They look at each other, awkward, human, fragile. And for the first time, the balance returns. Not because they conquered each other, but because they stopped trying to. The narrator ends with the closing line. Soft, devastating, unforgettable. Aristotle was wrong about women. He was wrong about men. But he was right about desire. That every time we try to control it, it ends up controlling us. The screen fades to black. And in the silence, a single phrase appears. Power was never the problem. Forgetting love was dust drifts through the air of an ancient library. A lone scholar, a woman, walks between shelves of lost wisdom. Her fingers trace the edges of a cracked scroll sealed in wax. The words are faded, the author unknown, until she wipes away the dust and reads one name. Aristotle. She opens it carefully. Inside, lines written in trembling ink. When the heart becomes a tool, the soul forgets its purpose. She stares at it, confused, haunted, because it doesn't sound like the Aristotle she read in textbooks. It sounds human, regretful. Another passage reads, I studied truth through logic, but love defied every law. For in every woman I saw not weakness, but reflection of what man fears most, to be powerless before emotion. The scholar closes her eyes, and as she does, time begins to bend. The walls of the library dissolve, the torches flicker, and she finds herself standing in the marble halls of ancient Greece. Aristotle is there, not as a statue but alive, old, calm, and waiting. She approaches him slowly. Are you real? She asks. He smiles. Only as much as truth ever is. The air hums, silent yet electric. You spoke of women as incomplete, she says. He shakes his head. I spoke of humanity as incomplete. But history only remembered the words that offended it. The scholar listens, spellbound. He continues. Men built strength to control the world. Women built emotion to control men. Both mistook control for love. She frowns. And what happens when neither side trusts love anymore? Aristotle's gaze turns heavy. Then the world forgets how to feel and remembers only how to win. He gestures toward the horizon, where the sea glows gold, endless and unreachable. Every age will repeat our mistakes until someone chooses truth over power. The scholar whispers, and what is truth? He answers softly, that to love is to surrender, not to another person, but to the moment itself. And surrender is the one act both men and women have learned to fear. The scene fades, the echo of his words lingering like wind through ruins. Back in the modern world, the scholar stands before a mirror, her own reflection staring back. Behind her reflection, images flicker like ghosts. Men chasing validation, women chasing control, both losing themselves in the chase. She whispers to the mirror, we've become what he feared, creatures of strategy, not soul. Tears rise, but they're not weak. They're real, the kind that cleans rather than manipulates. She places the scroll on her desk, its final line illuminated by candlelight. The war between man and woman was never between them. It was between love and the fear of losing control. And suddenly everything makes sense. Every heartbreak, every manipulation, every illusion of love, all of it, a desperate attempt to avoid surrender. Morning light. The scholar walks through a quiet park. Real people around her, alive, imperfect. She watches a young couple sitting on a bench. The girl laughs, genuinely. The boy listens, quietly. No games, no power, just presence. And for a moment, the world feels healed. A narrator's voice rises, calm, wise, final. Aristotle sought to define love through logic, but love was never meant to be defined. It was meant to be lived. The voice continues as scenes blend. A man deleting messages he'll never send. A woman closing her camera, walking outside. Two strangers smiling at each other without agenda. The last lesson was never about who controls whom. It was about remembering that love cannot belong to those who measure it. The camera pans upward, the same golden sky Aristotle once stared at. The narrator whispers the closing line, when power dies, love returns. And in that return, humanity begins again, fade to black. A single phrase appears. Aristotle's truth was never about women. It was about what happens when we forget how to love.